Grace, ready ka na ha?
Okay po.
Bago na po yan, bago na.
Okay, sige, go. Go, Grace.
Sige po. Wait po ah. Okay. Kita na po ba?
Yes po.
Okay. Saglit lang ha.
Wow, colorful. Sige, go ahead.
Okay po. Alright. Okay. Alright, so good afternoon ba? Good morning, classmates. So I'm going to report, this is about Java language issues, such as the subclasses and subtypes, generics, exception, and assertion. So first, let me define first what is Java. So Java is a powerful general purpose programming language. It is used to develop desktop and mobile applications, big data processing, embedded systems. So we all know that Java is the most popular programming languages, right? Here. So why is that Java is powerful? The first reason is it is an object-oriented programming language. Okay. And the second one is Java has rich API, the powerful development tools such as Eclipse and NetBeans, and a lot of open source libraries. So makikita naman natin sa internet, there's a lot of free sources regarding Java programming. Java is a platform independent. Okay. The idea of platform independence is a great in Java's tagline, like write once, run anywhere, or they call it WARA. This was the enticing enough to to attract lots of new development in Java. So that's why Java is powerful. Okay, so let's go ahead and discuss the subclasses. Subclass is a class that derives from another class. Okay, a subclass is inherits states and behavior from all of its ancestors. The term superclass refers to a class's direct ancestors as well as all of its ascendant classes. So here we have the A class, and then there's another class. So this is the superclass, and this is the subclass. Subtype is established when a class is linked by means of extending or implementing. So there are a number of ways Java allows subtyping. So if you look at this example, I'm sorry. So subtype actually is also a type which has a relation to another type called the parent type or the supertype. Okay, the subtype must, satisfy the features such as the values, methods, and the properties of the parent type. Okay. So subtyping and subclassing. Raquel, I'm sorry. Miss Joanna, can you read what is subtyping and subclassing?
Yes. Subtyping is a form of type polymorphism in which a subtype is a data type that is related to another data type, the supertype, by some notion of substitutability, meaning that program elements, typically subroutines or functions, written to operate on elements of the supertype can also operate on elements of the subtype. While for the subclassing, in general, subtyping establishes and is a relationship, whereas subclassing only reuses implementation and establishes a syntactic relationship, not necessarily a semantic relationship. Inheritance doesn't ensure behavioral subtyping.
Okay, thank you. All right, so to distinguish this concept, subtyping is also known as a interface inheritance, whereas the subclassing is known as implementation inheritance or code inheritance. So these are the issues of subclasses. We actually have two: the fragility of inheritance and inheritance violates encapsulations. Miss Margaret, nandyan ka pa ba?
Ako ba yung Margaret?
Ah, yes. Sorry.
Ah,
Margarita.
nagduda ako. Mute naman.
Dapat daw ginger tea. Ginger tea.
Ginger, Miss Ginger. Sorry.
Na iba. Sorry, nagduda ako.
Sorry. Okay.
Issues of subclasses, fragility of inheritance. This architectural problem is known as the fragile base class problem in an object-oriented programming system. Tapos, ito
Okay.
yung example of a class.
All right. Thank you. So we have the example here. Kinuha ko lang din to. If you look at it, seems like there's no problem. Okay. However, there is the improper design of the parent class that can lead the subclasses of a superclass to use the superclass is unexpected ways. So obviously, so here's show how to the test to ensure that the inheritance works fine. Okay, if you look at it, there's a subclass, the square, and so on. I don't know how to explain it. I'm sorry, but obviously the reason of this problem is that the developer of a base class has no idea of the subclass design. When they modify the base class, the subclass implementation could potentially break. Okay, and that's basically there. Okay, what is the solutions of subclasses issues? So if there is a breakable superclass, it is better to prohibit inheritance by labeling a declaration of a class or method respectively with the keyword final. And if you are allowing your class to be extended, it is best to only use one way to populate fields. So ito yata yung kaninang report ni Ma'am Lisa na much better na meron tayong ilalagay na parang comment. Yun ba yun? Okay. Next. Sino ba yung isa? Miss Lisa, can you read the inheritance violates encapsulation?
Okay. So inheritance violates encapsulations. This will happen if you are extending features from an documented parent class. Okay. Problem. Example of situation where inheritance forces a developer of the subclass to know about the internals of the superclass, which means that encapsulation in the superclass is, wait, um, can I read it again? Kasi problems. Example of situation where inheritance forces the developer of the subclass to know about the internals of the superclass, which means the encapsulation in the superclass is broken. I put his example in a small unit test case. Is that it?
Test case. Yes, ma'am. All right. Uh, thank you. So sometimes your private data gets modified and violates encapsulation. So in this example, it is entirely non-obvious why the add count, okay, the add count would return to 6, okay, instead of 3. After all, we only added 3 elements. You can see 3 elements, okay, and the answer is that the hash set that add all uses internally the add method, so that's why inheritance violates encapsulation. All right, so next is generics. So what are generics in Java? So we have I think 2. Java generic methods and generic classes. Okay, enable programmers to specify with single method declaration a set of related methods, or with single class declaration a set of related types respectively. So the use of generics in Java, this is enable types, the classes and interfaces to be parameters when defining classes, interfaces, and methods, so much like the more familiar formal parameters used in method declarations. Type parameters provide a way for you to reuse the same code with different inputs. So generic methods. What is generic methods? Ms. Raquel, nandiyan ka pa ba?
The type of parameter section of a generic class can have one or more type parameters separated by commas. All generic method declarations have a type of parameter section delimited by angled brackets that precedes the method's return type.
All right, thank you, Rags. So if you notice, the equal method signature showing syntax to use the type in methods. So also notice how to use these methods in our Java program. Okay? We can specify the type while calling these methods, or we can invoke them like a normal method. Java compiler is smart enough to determine the type of variable to be used. This facility is called the type inference. Generic classes are classes which take a type as a parameter. So they are particularly useful for collection classes. These are the example: the hash set, array list, and hash map, and so on. Alright, so these are the example of generic in Java. Let me go ahead, just give me a moment. So the following code has a compilation errors. It is confusing because you think somewhere to find a problem. So we have this class dog, class cat, and so on. Good. To fix the code, the easiest way is to cast the animals, okay, to array list to change the line 36. So that check animal array list animals. So the reason is that the array list class implements list interface, so they are different. List need to cast by array list in order to satisfy the method check animal array list animals. It should be there should have check animals or array list animals. Next is the exceptions in Java. Okay. Joanna, can you read what is exception?
The term exception is shorthand for the phrase exceptional event. An exception is an event which occurs during the execution of a program that disrupts the normal flow of the program's instructions. You can create your own exceptions in Java when writing your own exception classes. All exceptions must be a child of throwable. If you want to write a check exception that is automatically enforced by the handle or declare rule, you need to extend the exception class. If you want to write a runtime exception, you need to extend the runtime exception class.
Thank you. So, same with try and catch. Parang gagamit tayo dito ng try and catch. So, this is how we're going to define our own exception classes below. There are two categories of exceptions. First one is JVM exceptions and the programmatic exceptions. The JVM exceptions, these are exceptions or errors that are exclusively or logically thrown by the JVM. Examples: the null pointer exception, the array index out of bounds exceptions, class cast exception. The second one is pragmatic exceptions. So these exceptions are thrown explicitly by the application or the API programmers. Examples: illegal argument exceptions and the illegal statement exceptions. All right, next. Handling issues, error, or exception. So note, to handle the exception that was thrown, we have to catch it. Yung sinasabi ko, we do this by using an exception handling block. When we catch the exception, the program's flow control is handled to the exception handling block. There, we can make the necessary arrangement in order to deal with exception. Okay. All right. When an exception is thrown, the control flow of the program is interrupted. So if no one handles the exception, it causes the program to crash. So the user will see the exceptions message, which they most likely won't understand. So kadalas, minsan na-encounter din natin to pagka yung program may ano na lang magpapop. Okay, how Java exceptions work. All right, so as you can see in this example, after printing, the code above prints some messages and which line. So after printing the third line, the code initializes an array with the 3 integers and pass it as an argument to a private method. Then the method tries to print the fourth line. Item in the array which doesn't exist. So this causes array index out of bound exception to be thrown. When that happens, the program's execution is stopped and the exception message is shown. So the fourth here and the fifth line messages are never displayed, neither is executed the second line of the print fourth item array method. So ito yung possible output. First and second line lang yung hanggang third line lang yung mag-print. Okay. So adding some exception handling. So meron na siyang try and catch. So dito sa baba lang yung catch at the try and catch. Okay. So this is now the output, the final output. Nag-print na yung from first to third and then yung exception. Then automatic na siyang mag-print yung fourth line and fifth line. So what is assertion in Java? Assertion is a statement in Java programming language that enables you to test your assumptions about your program. For example, if you write a method that calculates the speed of a particle, you might assert that the calculated speed is less than the speed of light. Okay. So assertion statements has 2 forms. The first one is, sorry, Chris, can you read, please?
So the assertion statement has 2 forms. First, where expression is a Boolean, where the expression 1 is a Boolean expression. When the system runs the assertion, it evaluates expression, and if it is false, throws an assertion error with no detail message. Second, where expression 1 is a Boolean expression, expression 2 is an expression that has a value. It cannot be an invocation of a method that is declared void.
Thank you. All right, so the purpose of the detail message is not to capture and communicate the details of the assertion failure. So the message should allow you to diagnose and ultimately fix the error that led the assertion to fail. So when to use the assertions? So these are the situations that good to use assertions. First one is internal invariants, control flow invariants, preconditions, postconditions, and class invariants. So when we say class invariants are methods which check the validity of an object state, its data. So the idea is to define validation methods for fields and to perform these validations whenever the fields change. As usual, this should be done without repeating any code. So example of internal invariants. I think na-discuss na rin ito kanina ni Ma'am Lisa. Example code. All right. And use an assertion whenever you would have written comment that asserts an invariant. Hold on. All right, so in this example, internal invariants before kasi assertions were available. So many programmers used comments to indicate their assumptions concerning a program's behavior. For example, you might have written something like, like this. But using the assertion, you should now use an assertion where whenever you would have written a comment that asserts an invariant. So ayan. So yan siya. Yan yung example ng codes. So, example of control flow invariants. If you place an assertion to any location you assume will not be reached, the assertion's statement to use is assert false. And then example method, void, then F04, whatever. Then meron siyang comment, execution should never reach this point. Parang na-control niya yung flow. Control flow invariants. Next is the preconditions, postconditions, and the class invariants. The preconditions, what must be true when a method is invoked. Lock status preconditions, preconditions concerning whether or not a given lock is held. The postconditions, what must be true after a method completes successfully. Class invariants, what must be true about each instance of a class. So there's also a situation that we should not use assertion. First one is do not use assertions for argument checking in public methods. Okay. Second one is do not use assertions to do any work that your application requires for correct operations. Question, and these are my references. And thank you for listening. All right.
May question ba kayo? May question? Mukhang gutom na kayo, minadali nyo na.
Wala po.
Or do you have any additional inputs? Baka meron may additional inputs.
Yes, do you have any additional inputs po regarding this topic?
Wow, ha, Sir Luge, marunong ka na magluto, ha? Nagluluto para Sir Chris. Okay na po, if you don't have any question, thank you. Sir Chris, Madam Lisa, pasuyo na lang sa isa pang presenter next week. Siya po ang mauna.
Sige po, sir. Sige po.
Okay, salamat. Thank you very much, everyone. Congratulations sa mga presenter.
Okay, thank you, Doc.
Oy, yung mga nanay dyan, magluto na mga nanay dyan.
Thanks, everyone. Happy lunch.
Nagugutom na mga anak nyo, magsiluto na kayo.